Welcome to episode 278 of the Actual Astronomy Podcast. This is the Observing Mars, Jupiter, and some Deep Sky Objects edition. I'm Chris, and joining me is Shane. We are amateur astronomers who love looking up at the night sky, and this podcast is for anybody else who likes going out under the stars. So we have a couple thank yous for some donors there. Shane, do you want to just give a shout out to these kind folks?
Yeah. Thank you, Michael and Jim, for your Patreon support. As always, we really appreciate this. And thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. And just a reminder that we are doing a giveaway for all of our Patreon supporters later in December. We'll announce, it's just a random draw, and it'll be I think a combination of RASC Observer handbooks and maybe a calendar or two as well from the RASC. So we're excited for that. And again, just thanks to all of the Patreon supporters.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks to everybody. And end up getting at least a few handbooks for us to give away because, we got a bit of a bulk discount, but had to order so many. So, it should be a pretty good time when we get into December, can give some of those away. So I actually did some beach going myself. We had that image there from Felipe in Brazil last week, and so I got this image here. I gotta send to him of our beach. Not sure if you're able to scroll down and see that in the notes there, Shane.
Yeah, I can see that.
So
it's a little bit different.
There's no open water. It's the water is frozen, and if one zooms in a little, you can see an ice fishing shack out there.
Yeah, a little early for that, I think, but
there's a few of them out there.
Yeah, that's crazy to me. I don't know. I wouldn't be out there quite yet, but
I thought it seemed kind of early, but there's people are putting them out. I counted, I think, 15 out there.
Holy smokes!
Yeah. It's ice fishing shack season, I guess. I think after this week, the ice will be in deep enough for sure. I was out doing some observing last night. Did you get out in your yard?
Yeah, I set up in the backyard. It was, well, for the first time in quite a while, we actually had clear skies, and it was very temperate. Like, it was nice. It was around freezing. Actually, I think when I was out, it dropped to about -6 Celsius, but overall, for this time of the year, that is quite nice, and have to take advantage of that. So, what did you end up looking at last night?
Few things. I actually got out on Thursday night too. Thursday night was really pleasant. It was -6, and I did an observation of Mars. I spent like 2 hours, probably more than 2 hours, trying to get a view of Mars, but that was like really, really terrible seeing. It was just boiling away. But there was almost zero wind, and it was -6. So I didn't even wear gloves. I had my hat and coat and winter gear on. But it was like when it's -6 and no wind out here, it can be really quite comfortable, eh?
Oh yeah. It doesn't take long for that to suck the heat out of you and make it a very uncomfortable time.
Yeah, no, for sure. So last night, I decided to go to dark sky site because it was going to be not the best conditions, but it was going to be okay conditions. And I thought, you know what, no matter how sort of marginal the sky ends up being, I'll be happy to have gone out when it's not too cold, because I think it was 2 degrees above zero at the end of November, which might as well be at the end of February. It's about the same weather here. That's not bad weather. So I went out and set up as the sun went down, and then had a pretty decent session. I think I sent you or texted you an image of the moon, kind of with a few little light clouds kind of sprinkled across the sky. It was quite pretty.
Yeah, I caught that too when I was outside just setting up the telescope near sunset. And it was quite pretty, very thin crescent moon. And one nice thing with the skies that we have here, and we have like basically a horizon to horizon view because everything is so flat, you really get that nice color variation during sunset, from the kind of the darker oranges to very light to transitioning to a light blue, and quite pretty.
Yeah, the crazy part is, though, it's at this time of year when the sun goes down. I mean, in fact, even before the sun goes down, because it's so low on the horizon already. So and it's at such a shallow angle. As it gets towards that last 15 or 20 minutes before sunset, like the street lights are all on and everything, it's already pretty dark, eh?
Oh yeah, for sure it is.
Pretty surprising. And yeah, and then once the sun sets, and last night it set at 5:01 p.m., it's almost like someone, is just rapidly turning down the dimmer switch. So pretty much by 6 o'clock, it was really dark by 6 o'clock. So yeah, I barely had time to kind of get the place warming up, go to the beach, come back, start working on the podcast notes, eat dinner, and then get set up and go. And then you and I were chatting. We were trying to figure out what to talk about for this episode. And then we're like, oh yeah, why don't we just talk about what we're going to observe tonight, and what some of the listeners have been observing. So, did you get a chance to look at Jupiter any last night?
Yeah, I looked at Jupiter, Mars, the Pleiades, and the Hyades. Seeing was not great last night. You and I think, both had pretty similar skies, even though we were separated by quite a few kilometers. Yeah, seeing was maybe a 2 out of 5, in my opinion. It was not great. When I looked at Jupiter, it was weird though. Sometimes I find that poor seeing affects Jupiter differently on different nights, and I'm not sure why that is. And what I mean by that is, like, the seeing was so poor that I don't think I was even really able to make out like the northern polar regions or the southern polar region
really?
all that well. Like, it was there, but I've seen it so much better.
Oh yeah,
And like the edges of the limbs were almost non-existent, like in terms of the banding.
Yeah.
But like in the middle of the planet, the equatorial bands were very detailed actually. So it was strange how much it was boiling, but yet the equatorial bands for some reason really stood out. So go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, did you see like there was like a bit of a dark, like a large dark area on the north equatorial band, and then there was almost like a large oval. I put a sketch into our show notes. Not sure if you made it down that far yet.
Yeah, I did.
I'm not sure if you were able to see. And then inside, sort of on the left of the image, on the equatorial zone, like there was some ruddiness in there as well, like an arc running through it or something.
Yeah, it was quite interesting. In that dark region on the northern equatorial band, at first I thought maybe it was a shadow transit, because it was, I wasn't using very much power at that point, and I saw the darkness.
Yeah.
So that was kind of intriguing, and definitely the southern temperate belt was quite apparent last night too, I felt. But
yeah, it had like it was darker towards like on the right side of my image. You can see where I shaded and darker there. Like for sure that was like a darker area.
Yeah. And this is I can't remember which podcast it was, the Observer's Notebook maybe. Quite a ways back, they talked about when observing Jupiter, they were very interested in estimating, the color variations and brightness of the equatorial bands. I think it was on that podcast anyway.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So ever since then, I've certainly paid a lot more attention to some of those slight variations of, darkness and shading and all that kind of stuff. Again, Jupiter just has so much detail. It's you could spend a lot of time on it, and I did. I think I ended up using about 100 times magnification, which I think was a touch high. I preferred the view at, let me just do the math here, at about 70 times. I felt that was a little bit better for the conditions I had. Yeah. So I'm not sure what power you were using.
150.
Ooh.
148.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's way better than me.
What I do is so I don't know how you're keeping your scope these days, but I had the scope outside in my car all day, and then I drove out and had it in the car for a while, and it was cool out there, and so my scope was probably at like maybe 7 or 8 degrees Celsius, and so then I set it up when it got to 0, and then went back in for 45 or 50 minutes, and so the scope was totally cooled down. And then I find out there, because like there's no local buildings and there's no city, like the city effect here lately has been really quite bad. And then being out there just really seemed to be able to to get that much more power out. I mean, yeah, it comes and goes, but I don't know if you're using your observing chair much these days, but like I
Oh
just
yeah.
sit, yeah, I mean, I just sit there and kind of wait for the moments and then put a few details down. So this is like maybe a 25 or 30 minute sketch. So
Mm. Yeah, I'd
yeah,
let
it
my
takes a bit of
telescope
time.
cool for about 2 to 2.5 hours outside before I
Hmm.
started observing. Also had the bino viewer out there, so it would acclimatize, and I
Yeah.
bino viewed the whole night. So yeah, it just wasn't great. And then Mars, I looked at that for a little bit. And where it was, I was looking over top of some buildings, which probably was adding insult to injury because you get that heat radiating from those buildings, and it can cause some
Yeah.
local kind of atmospheric distortion. So about the same power on Mars, about 70-ish to 100 times. I was kind of bouncing between. Syrtis Major was very apparent. I can't say that I saw the northern polar cap, but certainly like a kind of a large white region up there. But I'm not
Hmm.
sure if that was cloud or polar cap or what. It just, it was bouncing around too much for me to say for sure. I'm not sure if you were able to
Yeah.
see much detail there.
Yeah. I got a little bit of detail, but I got a story to tell first.
Oh, gee. Okay, let's hear the story.
Well, I already told you part of it last night because I kind of had a
Yeah,
bit of
yeah.
a, yeah, it was not the best show because, like I said, I'd set up, and the nice part about being out there is I have a heat pump and I can throw that on and I can warm the place up. Like it wasn't like hot, but it was nice and warm in there. So sort of between, I knew I was going to observe like Jupiter and then something and then
Hmm.
Mars. I wasn't sure what that something was, but I decided I would observe and sketch the California Nebula. And I
Hmm.
did an observation of the double cluster as well. Actually, I sat and observed the double cluster, and I think it's stock 2 or whatever it is beside it, for maybe about 10 or 15 minutes before I observed Jupiter, just to kind of, sort of get into the observing for the evening.
Hmm.
And then after I did my sketch of Jupiter, I decided to go in and just grab some water and just sit for 5 or 6 minutes, just relax. And then before I went back out, and I had left my multiple filter selector, which is like a diagonal with a set of has like four places in it to put 2-inch filters. I leave one blank, and then I had the UHC, the O3, and the H beta in there. So I was like, all right, I'm going to take this out, and I'm going to swap diagonals out, and then go and take a look at the California Nebula. So I went back out, and it was just like there was a couple funny things. So there's a lot of deer out there, and I mentioned this, and it is kind of a funny thing, but the deer are around. They're around mostly at dusk and at night, which is also when I'm outside at dusk and at night, and they've almost. I mean, they're fairly tame anyway, but they get really curious, and they will kind of come sort of walking around and whatever. So I'm kind of used to that. So it doesn't really freak me out as much anymore.
Hmm.
But last night somebody was walking their dog. I didn't, and I was focused on observing and then switching out all this gear, and then they threw something in the garbage can, which is in front of our place. And of course, because there's nobody out there, so usually there's nobody within like 100 meters of me, and then suddenly I hear this loud bang like right in front of me. It's 60 feet away, but it sounds very close because it's so deadly quiet out there. Anyway,
Hmm.
kind of startled me, and then I was kind of like sort of keeping my ears kind of perked, and I think that caused me to as I was switching out like all this gear, switching out the diagonal, my high power eyepiece, switching over to the multiple filter selector and putting in the Masayama. I end up kind of juggling them, and then actually end up dropping the Masayama, and it hit my tripod, hit my chair, and then it went like field lens first into the snow. And of course, I didn't
Oh.
have the eyepiece cap on the thing, and it like filled up like about a third of the top of the eyepiece with snow. So I like quickly just kind of gave it a couple quick little taps, and I got most of the snow out of it. And and then what I did is I was like, oh, what should I do with this thing? Should I take it in and try to mess with it? I'm like, no, I'm just going to cap it up. I'm going to switch to a different low power eyepiece. I'm not going to worry about it. These sort of things happen. I was kind of
Mhm.
like, this is what I get for not having an observatory. And so I put it in the case, and then when I got home, I when I bought my 22 Nagler from Ray Khan at Con Scope in Toronto, he gave me a like a lens cleaning kit. It was like a free giveaway or something, or it came with it when it came in the mail. And I really didn't know too much about what was in there. So last night I'm like, well, time to find out. So I opened it up, and it had this huge like lens cleaning cloth. Like, I don't know, the thing is about maybe 18 inches by 18 inches. It's really big. And it has all these like, it's sort of like serrated around the edges. And so what I did is I took that and I kind of dabbed it, and it's super absorbent. So I was like, oh, this is perfect. So I kind of was able to dab and kind of wick up any of the moisture that was on the lens. And some was around sort of the rim, and I was able to kind of run it around the rim because I was like, well, that's okay. It's not like part of the glass that you really look through anyway. And so I just kind of very carefully like ran it around the rim a few times, just very gently. And it is a lens cleaning cloth too. And I think that got most of it. And then what I did is just to sort of be on the safe side is I was like, well, I recently, we were talking about this before the podcast, is I bought a couple accessories for doing recording in the field. A couple listeners have been asking about that. And I got this microphone from Rode, and for some reason, they put in this really decent sized desiccant pack. And in the other device that I bought from Rode, it had a small one. And so I took a one of those screw together lens cases, and so I put the eyepiece in there, and then put all this desiccant around it, just in their own packets. And then I'm hoping that will help over the next few days, like draw out any of the remaining moisture that might have been trapped in. I don't know if that's how I should have done it, but that's how I did it.
Yeah, I think, that's probably a pretty good approach. The only thing I might have tried maybe slightly different would be to get like a like a Kleenex or a paper towel, just to like, rather than moving kind of the water around on the lens, just like touch it so it absorbs everything, and then to see how far you get with that. But
that's really what I did.
Oh,
really.
okay.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's really, and then around like the inside, like that's like there's like a small gap between the top of the lens and there's like a retaining ring. And I was concerned about the water being in there, so I kind of had to get something in there, but it's not very much room. And this thing just like fit perfectly. And I'm not really that concerned about. I mean, this is like beyond the area that any light passes through, really. So just sort of purely for mechanical reasons. So yeah, that's really kind of how I did it. I think. Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah,
I think it was
good,
decent. So. I was kind of a bit like, but you know what it did though is it killed about an hour of observing because right then and there I knew that I wanted to get home back into the city in time that I would have about an hour to kind of monkey around with it in case I needed that. And it was good. At the time I got home, it was, like 9 o'clock or so. And by the time I finished messing around with it, it was like 30 or 40 minutes, just because I was trying to be super careful and figure it out. So yeah, so I only did like 2 hours, but I did do a sketch of the California. I'm not sure if you've made your way down to that sketch, which I did at 18 power. Yeah, can you make it out there?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So yeah, it was a decent size field of view because I was using my 40 millimeter XW with the H beta on the multiple filter selector, and yeah, it was. I mean, I love the 40 millimeter XW anyway, and it gives like a 3.6 or 3.7 degree true field of view. So it really is about almost like the whole field of view across, because I think that nebula is just about 3.5 degrees across. But I could really see like the lines in it last night. I mean, they were subtle, but you could see them. I kind of tried to get those in the sketch as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I haven't looked at that probably for a year or two, actually. So nice to see the sketch.
Yeah, I like that. It's pretty easy. It was kind of a bit low down, but I was sort of looking for something. And originally, I thought about doing something in Orion, but I knew after I got out there and saw that Orion wasn't going to be really high until much later that maybe I would pick this. And the night wasn't spectacular. It was okay, but it was really just okay. The
Mm-hmm.
main part about the night was that the temperature was so pleasant.
Yeah, it was great. Like I didn't even have gloves on for my 2 hours that I was outside. It was really nice. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I was switching in and out a bit because just like handling the cold metal in that, and this is one of the things that I really do like about the Pentax eyepieces is they have like a lot of rubber on them, and that's much easier
Mm-hmm.
on the hands in the winter. Let me tell you.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. It really does make a difference.
Yeah.
Because any kind of metal just sucks the heat out of your hands, and
Oh
even if
yeah.
you're wearing gloves, it can be quite a inconvenience or uncomfortableness.
Yeah.
Yeah, like even some of the tripods that I like metal tripods that I've had in the past, some of them have had like a kind of a foam wrapping around the top, and
Yeah.
what a difference that makes just for keeping warm.
That's a good. I hadn't thought of that before, but I bought all this. I'm not very handy, and you know this, Shane. So people might laugh at this, but I bought all this pipe insulator for the cottage, and I didn't know it came in different sizes. Anyway, so I bought the wrong sizes, and I have all this extra pipe insulator. I'm like, what I'm gonna, because it was, I mean, it was inexpensive. I think it was like $5 or $6 for like all this stuff. I got it on sale, probably because it's like some weird size or something. I don't know. But I was trying to figure out what to do with it. I think that would be a good idea. I think I should take some of that and put it around the legs of my Bogan tripod. That would be a great idea.
Yeah, it'd make a real difference.
Just even to have one or two of them covered up, just because I'll tell you, when I was tearing down last night, like it wasn't really cold, but it was a day that was warm. We do still have a ton of snow down because we don't get that much sun. Even when the sun's up, it's really not. I mean, it seems sunny, but there's not any energy in it anymore.
Mhm.
And so we did get an appreciable amount of melt, but just enough really to saturate the air. So there was a lot of humidity. I don't know about your scope, but my scope was, it looked like, something out of Frosty Winter or some sort of, movie or something. It was just covered in frost. And I was like, well, I can't grab this with my hands because I thought my hands just might stay stuck to it or something.
Yeah, I was
So,
going to mention that too. It was really humid last night. Like
yeah.
I think that contributed to the poor seeing.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, like I had a pretty heavy layer of frost on my telescope by the time I went indoors, which was I think my telescope was outside for about 3 hours, and
Yeah.
yeah, super frosty. So what I did was the old blanket routine. I took a blanket out, hung it on my deck, so it was outside for an hour or two,
Yeah.
and I wanted to cool the blanket. So when I brought the telescope in, I wrapped it in the blanket.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, and then it's gentler on the telescope because it doesn't suddenly hit like 21 degrees Celsius from
Hmm.
-6. It'll
Oh, yeah.
slowly warm up in the house because that blanket will insulate it a little bit.
Yeah. I didn't, now that I think about it, I think, it's one of those things when you're observing and, you know what I did? I meant to mention this. I thought I had it in my notes up above, but I went to the Howard Bannock talk or Bannock talk on Friday night at the KW Rask, which is the RASC club over in Kitchener-Waterloo, Ontario. I used to be a member there. Anyway, one of the members there, Peter, he knows Howard Bannock, who is somebody that writes for Sky and Telescope magazine and does a lot of sketching there. Anyway, he was just talking about a lot of this stuff too about losing one's ability to think properly. Once you're out there at the eyepiece, and he talked about sketching and about logging, and we're working on an episode for people to submit their logs.
Mm-hmm.
And what he said really emulates my position as well. And that is that I find like I'm able to sketch, even though typically I don't draw or sketch. And he was talking about being very similar. He's not an artist or anything he was saying. But I find like trying to take notes, I don't know why, but it just doesn't work that well for me. But I
Mm-hmm.
find the sketching is good. I like it, and I find that an easier thing to do, actually, sort of strangely enough. And but yeah, as part of it, I find like I don't know why it is, but when I get observing, I just can't think as well about non like directly observing things. If I'm looking for stuff, I'm good, but like, and I've always been like this, but like I should have remembered that I put an old towel in the cottage somewhere just in case I needed one just for this purpose, but I completely had forgotten. So I kind of end up being very careful in how I dismounted the telescope the other night because it was so frosty, but kind of cradled it very carefully in big midget gloves kind of thing.
Yeah. It can be a real pain. Like everything in the wintertime for us is like 1.5 times more time consuming
Oh
because
yeah.
you just have so much more to prepare and even just getting dressed and undressed, for
Oh
the
yeah.
outdoors. Like there's
Yeah.
so much more involved, but it was worth it. It was really nice to be out because it's been so long and like there's times in the summer, spring, and fall where it might be a nice clear night for observing, but I've got other things or I'm lazy and I just don't do it. But
Hmm.
in the wintertime like this, when there's a night around 0 degrees and it's going to be clear,
Yeah.
everything else in my life, if I can, gets canceled.
Yeah.
and,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm outside with the telescope because you just have to take advantage of those situations.
Yeah. Yeah. I know it can be tough. But yeah, just everything is more difficult. Like even like going out there where like when it's not this cold and snowy, or even if it was this cold but not snowy, it would be way easier because I could kind of come in and be around in the cottage being warm. But you kind of have to take two of everything, and I didn't quite do that. But like I have to take two things to wear on my feet. I have to take something to wear inside. I have to take something to wear outside. I had to actually bring my spikes because there's like a couple spots where the water can pool when it melts around my cottage, and these like spots I'm gonna have to walk over like 100 times when I'm out there at night. One of them wasn't too bad. I probably could have been okay without them, but I didn't want to go like flying, in the dark out
Mhm.
there. There is a really bad icy patch, and I just didn't know how bad it was. Anyway, all those like little things just kind of add up to making it definitely a more involved process. That's for sure, to
Yeah.
say the least.
Yeah, absolutely. It does.
Did get some views of Mars. Took a look at the Syrtis Major last night.
Yeah, it's very prominent, wasn't it?
It was yeah. Syrtis Major was pretty good. I could see the Hellas region. That was pretty good. Mare Terrenum. That was coming through, and maybe a little bit of Mare Samarium as well. That's one of my favorite regions. And then Mare Serpentis was coming through quite well as well. And then you mentioned the polar cap. So I noticed this the other night, and I kind of blamed it on the bad seeing. So and I did a sketch, and I was just
Hmm.
like, man, what is going on?
Hmm.
Because you talked about like the brighter areas, and in my sketch from Thursday night, which wasn't a great sketch, and the seeing was rather atrocious, I noticed that like there was a bit of like white flaring, but it wasn't where the polar cap should be, but it was pretty bright.
Super bright.
Yeah, but did you notice it was almost like, I don't know, it was like 20 degrees, 30 degrees off where I thought the
Yep.
polar cap. Did you notice that?
Yeah, that's why I wasn't sure what I was seeing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just didn't seem like, yeah, it was out of place and I wasn't sure what it was.
Yeah, those are clouds.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's part of the polar hood system, and for whatever reason, the brightest part of it is kind of like shifted off to almost like like it's on the limb. It's not.
Mhm.
It's almost outside of that polar zone, sort of on the polar zone itself. I could, kind of get a bit of the polar hood, but the polar hood itself is kind of grayish. But then this is like a brighter area, and then I noticed that there was some limb brightening as well. I don't know whether it's some of that dust that's still in the atmosphere, or some thin cloud, or whether it's maybe some frost on the ground. But then as well, I didn't know if you noticed. I didn't really notice Hellas being bright. I'm not sure if you noticed anything on Hellas.
No, I didn't. No.
So, oh, and so by the way, and I should mention this because I was talking to Phil about it. So when I go out, I don't look at anything. And I was talking about this a little bit at the KW Center meeting because I showed one of my sketches. And like, I don't go out and say, oh, well, tonight the Certus Major is going to be just past the meridian when I'm observing. I'm like, I just go out and look, and then I start sketching. So I go out and look, and I'm like, yeah, okay, that's the Certus Major. It's just like kind of trying to learn Mars by look, not by looking at like the Mars profile or some other resources that people might use, which are super handy once I've made the observation. But I try to make the observation without looking first. I mean, everybody's different, but that's the way that I like to do it because I feel like that's better, sort of a better way of training my eye anyway.
Yeah, I have a similar approach for all of my observing. I think sometimes you can, I don't know what the right word is, but if you're expecting to see something, sometimes you might see it even if you're not seeing it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah.
it's better to go out there, observe, record what you think you're seeing, and then go validate it and see
Yeah.
if you were right or try to make sense of what you saw.
And nobody ever looked at Mars and saw stuff they never thought they should be seeing. Said nobody ever. So yeah, Mars is sort of notorious for this. So you gotta be careful. And the other thing is that Mars, as with the other planets, but almost like Mars it's so the details are so subtle, but the planet is so dynamic that you're just working against yourself to try to look at a map and then look at Mars and then try. I mean, you're that I found more difficult than just going out, doing the observations, making some mistakes, I'm certain of it, and then going back and then taking a look. But I kind of try to sketch what I see because I'm not sort of preconditioned to see one thing or another. And this comes back to like even you and I, Shane, like your observation last night kind of mimics my one from Thursday night where I was like, what is this? And when we were talking before the podcast, like you were saying, like it was like there was some white, but it wasn't where the pole was. Like your mind just is having trouble interpreting it because you want to put the brightest white spot right on the pole, but that's not the way it looks right now.
Yep, 100%.
And by simply just having the past experience of seeing those polar caps on the poles, it kind of preconditions us to think that what we are seeing is a mistake, but what you were seeing is cloud. And then last night I was running 148 power, no filters, and for sure had a good view of that. And I saw a brightening over the Libya region. I don't know what that was. I haven't been able to see if there's some cloud or some frost maybe that was low lying in that area, but definitely I had some pretty good white. Some white cloud of some sort or something or optical defect or haze in our atmosphere, who knows? But I definitely was seeing something there. And then I think it was in the area region, AERIA, I saw some brightening as well. And to me, both those regions were white compared to Hellas. Hellas was just sort of that ruddy orange. So I don't know. I don't know what those were exactly, but I captured them in my sketch along with the Certus Major, and I think there is some dust. There is some dust. I did look on Cloudy Nights today, and someone had posted. I thought it was a photo. I mean, maybe it is a photo, but I think it was their sketch of Mars last night through the 60-inch at Mount Wilson. So that's there on Cloudy Nights for those that are eager to look. But I think it must have been a sketch, but they didn't capture that, but they captured a lot more detail of the Certus Major and seemed to just have their sketch focused on the Certus Major, whereas Certus Major only takes up about maybe a fifth or less of my sketch.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, the other thing too with that, that cloud around the northern pole that made me think or really question what I was seeing was just the size of it too. Like normally when you see a pole cap, it's not huge, and it has some very distinct like lines to it. Like, it's kind of a bright white and then it's like orange or darker colors. Like it's very distinct that way. And this was very large and it almost sort of just faded away, like there wasn't that distinct line on the edge of it. So yeah, cloud makes a lot of sense on that one.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, for sure. I
Yeah.
was seeing some variances in the North Polar hood, though.
Mm.
I made like that's just my like this is like a technical sketch, and what I'll do is take this technical sketch and then tonight or tomorrow evening I'll process that in the GIMP software and see if I can kind of bring to life what I saw and hopefully it's cool that you were looking at the same time. So that'd be pretty cool. Yeah. Anything else on your observations, Shane? Did you look at any double stars, or didn't you say you looked at the Hyades before we recorded?
Yeah, Hyades and the Pleiades. Spent a little bit of time in there. So yeah, definitely some of the double groups that exist in those two clusters. Yeah, it was really nice views. I was using some microscope eyepieces for that
Oh,
part of my night. Yeah, I have some Zeiss Opmis, or I think that's how you say it. So it's Zeiss OPMI, and they're very well regarded eyepieces. And what's neat about them is they have outstanding eye relief, first of all, for us eyeglass wearers.
hmm.
They have diopter adjustments on the eyepiece. So if you wanted to go without glasses and you have an astigmatism, you can adjust the diopter for, the eyepiece to accommodate your eye, which is pretty cool.
What?
Yeah, yeah, it's really neat, really
Where did
neat.
you get these treasures?
Well, these ones I got on eBay. So
Huh.
there's a 25 millimeter, a 20, and I'm not sure. I think there's like another one, maybe like a 12, but I'm not
Hmm.
100% sure on that one. And I'm not sure I've seen a sharper eyepiece, to be perfectly honest. It is just incredible
Hmm.
how transparent these things are. And I haven't used them a ton, so I want to keep playing around with them. But wow, they really were quite nice. What I would like to do is use them under a dark sky on stuff like the North American Nebula, like things that are not on the edge of detection, but fainter objects, and just to see how these things do on those types of objects. But if you read on Cloudy Nights, there's a number of reviews on these eyepieces, and they're quite well regarded. And everything that I've looked at so far through them certainly backs up the
Huh.
rave reviews that they get.
Cool. Very
Yeah.
cool. All right.
Yeah, so that was kind of my night, and then I packed up and put everything away.
Cool. Good stuff. Hey, I was thinking we're kind of getting towards the end of our time here, but maybe what we can do is we can move. Wade wrote us about the Horsehead Nebula, and maybe we can move that over to the next episode because we're going to talk about what's up in the sky for December. Maybe we can just put that email over there when we talk about Orion. And I can skip ahead and just read Bill's email on his Mars observation, and then we can call it an episode. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
All right. So Bill writes, and Bill is a longtime listener and an even longer time friend, and he's a tremendously experienced observer over in Vancouver Island. So Bill writes, "Hey guys, just a quick note. Last night I was out observing for the sixth night in the past 10 days. I was listening to your last couple of episodes. 3 nights were with my 150 millimeter Dob, one with my NP 101, which is that's the Petz fault refractor from Tel Aviv, isn't it, Shane?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And then he also had his 250 millimeter Starmaster at the school observatory, and he did one night with his 508 millimeter 20-inch Starmaster. So he said it's been a great couple of weeks. I enjoyed hearing how Felipe sent you an image of the lovely South American beach to complement the fabulous weather you have been getting in Saskatchewan. Everybody enjoyed that. Actually, it was pretty good. I feel like we should put that up on the website. Philip is gonna go out and get us another image. He wrote me and said, "I'll get you a better image of something even more spectacularly tropical." So, yeah, it's wonderful. So Bill goes on to say, "I know you two can get to way darker skies more easily than I can, but being trapped on an island, because Bill's on Vancouver Island, it goes on to say, but I think I'll stay put where it doesn't get colder than 0 degrees Celsius."
I can't really argue with him on that point.
Yeah.
That's a fair strategy.
Yeah. Yeah, it is like yeah, it's so difficult. Like every place I've lived has its charms. Like, you know, Nova Scotia by the water, like the dew there is just almost unbearable. But you can get to like all these pretty good little observing sites, and the land is really undulated, so it really cuts the light pollution pretty quick outside the city. And I have lots of friends there to observe and good land to observe on. And then out in Ontario, the summers can sort of be a bit of a dream. You get lots of good stable weather, and then out here we have lots of dark skies. It's every place has its thing. All right, Bill goes on to say, the seeing here has been very good lately, except for the night out with the big scope, but that was just okay. And he used it mostly for deep sky observing. Last night was very good, so I decided not to be lazy and did a quick Mars sketch. My flashlight was failing, so I roughed it out and then fixed it up inside. Usually I just sketch live off the floor, but sometimes you have to break your own rules. He says, I don't do color anymore. Yeah, I can see. Yeah, it's a great sketch there. Oh man, I'm not sure he didn't put, and I do this as well. I do the sketch and then I know what the area is, but I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, I don't know which area it is, but it's a really nice sketch of Mars. I can see the North Polar hood. He was able to get the South Polar cap, which was super cool. And he was using his 153 millimeter f8 Dob at 300 power. That's pretty good for hand tracking.
Yeah, for sure it is.
Nice. Well, thanks so much for your sketch, Bill. Really appreciate it. And look forward to hearing more from you. Yeah, we got a couple other emails there, but I think what we'll do, Shane, is I think maybe we'll cut it here, and then gives people an easier chunk to listen to, and maybe carry some of this stuff forward to future episodes.
Sounds good, Chris.
All right. Well, unless you have anything else to add.
I do not.
Well, thank you. Thanks, everybody, for listening. And we're always excited to receive your listener questions or observing emails to actualastronomy@gmail.com.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show. If you are interested in more information, would like to contact us, or if you would like to support the podcast, check out our website, actualastronomy.com.